Long before cities lit up the night and science explained the unknown, our ancestors huddled around fires, whispering stories of things lurking in the shadows. Imagine a moonless night in ancient Mesopotamia, where priests chanted over a clay tablet inscribed with forbidden symbols, their voices trembling as they called upon something that should never have been named. Or picture a lonely traveler in the misty highlands of Scotland, stepping too close to a crumbling stone circle, only to hear a whisper from the rocks themselves. These weren't just campfire tales, they were warnings, and tonight we're stepping into that darkness. Across every culture, in every corner of the world, people have passed down legends so chilling they've survived for thousands of years. Some were born from real events, mass disappearances, cursed artifacts, or unexplained deformities in livestock. Others seem to tap into something deeper, something primal, the fear of what watches us from the edge of the firelight. From the blood-drinking spirits of ancient India to the bone flutes of the Andes that play melodies no living hand could compose, these stories weren't just meant to entertain. They were meant to make you look over your shoulder. So why do these ancient terrors still grip us? Maybe because they remind us that the world hasn't always been safe, explainable, or tame. And as we count down 25 of the most unsettling legends from forgotten cultures, you'll start to notice eerie patterns, creatures with too many eyes, rituals that defy logic, and places where the very air hums with wrongness. Some of these tales might sound familiar, twisted into modern ghost stories. Others have been buried so deep, hearing them now feels like uncovering a grave. So turn up the lights, or maybe turn them off if you're brave, and let's begin where all good horror starts, in the past where the shadows were darker and the legends were real enough to kill. The desert winds howl through the Valley of the Kings, carrying whispers of a warning carved into the walls of a 3,000-year-old tomb. Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the Pharaoh. When Howard Carter's team broke the seal of Tutankhamun's burial chamber in 1922, the world marveled at the glittering treasures inside, but the celebration didn't last. Within months, Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's financier, lay dead from a seemingly trivial mosquito bite that turned septic. The lights of Cairo reportedly flickered out at the exact moment of his passing, and his dog, back in England, let out a howl and dropped dead. Journalists seized on the story, dubbing it the curse of the Pharaohs, and suddenly, every misfortune tied to the excavation took on sinister meaning. A worker involved in opening the tomb allegedly died from a fever. Another was said to have been stabbed by his own wife. Even Carter's personal secretary, Richard Bethel, was found smothered in his bed under mysterious circumstances. Skeptics point out that many of these deaths had logical explanations. Carter himself lived another 16 years unharmed, but the sheer number of eerie coincidences keeps the legend alive. Some scientists suggest ancient spores or toxins sealed in the tombs could explain the illnesses, while others wonder if the psychological weight of defying such a dire warning played its own cruel trick on the explorers. Modern archaeologists still debate whether the curse was a genuine supernatural force, a clever deterrent crafted by tomb builders, or simply bad luck amplified by superstition. But one thing's certain: when you stand before those golden sarcophagi, staring into the painted eyes of a boy king who never meant to be found, the air itself feels heavy. Maybe it's just the dust of centuries, or maybe, just maybe, some doors were never meant to be opened. Deep in the scrolls of Jewish mysticism, buried between ancient incantations and prayers, lurks a terror so intimate it doesn't just haunt your home, it steals your body. The Dybbuk, a soul so tormented or wicked it refuses to move on, clings to the living like a second skin. Unlike ghosts that rattle chains or demons that stalk the night, a Dybbuk doesn't just visit. It moves in. The word itself comes from the Hebrew davak, meaning to cling, and that's exactly what these entities do. According to Kabbalistic texts, when a soul is denied entry to the afterlife, whether due to unrepented sins, unfinished business, or sheer malice, it seeks refuge in a living host. The possessed might suddenly speak in tongues they've never learned, convulse with unnatural strength, or scream accusations in the voices of the dead. One of the most chilling accounts comes from 16th century Safed, where a rabbi's wife began vomiting nails and reciting obscenities in the voice of a hanged murderer. Exorcisms performed by holy men versed in the secret names of God often involved blowing a ram's horn, burning sacred incense, and demanding the Dybbuk confess its sins before being driven out. But what makes the Dybbuk endure in horror isn't just its brutality, it's the tragedy. These aren't faceless monsters, they're souls in agony, and their possessions often expose hidden crimes or unresolved wounds. The 1937 play The Dybbuk seared the legend into modern culture, blending folklore with themes of doomed love and spiritual unrest. Even today, echoes of the Dybbuk appear in films like The Possession or The Vigil, where the horror isn't just about losing control of your body, it's about confronting the ghosts of the past that refuse to let go. Perhaps the most unsettling question isn't whether Dybbuks exist, but why this particular legend resonates across centuries. Maybe because possession isn't just a supernatural threat, it's a metaphor for guilt, trauma, or the parts of ourselves we can't escape. When the exorcist chants the final prayer and the Dybbuk shrieks its way into the dark, what's left behind isn't just relief. It's the uneasy knowledge that some doors, once opened, can never fully close. In the dense jungles of the Philippines, where coconut trees cast long shadows and the air hums with the sound of cicadas, there's a predator that doesn't just hunt in the night, it becomes the night. The Aswang is no ordinary monster. It's a shapeshifter, a trickster, a creature that wears the faces of your neighbors by day and feasts on the flesh of the unwary by night. One of the most feared variations is the Manananggal, a grotesque being that splits its own torso at the waist, leaving its lower half behind while the upper body sprouts bat-like wings and takes flight. Imagine walking home at dusk and spotting something perched on your roof, a woman with hollow eyes, her elongated tongue unfurling like a ribbon, probing the air for the scent of pregnant women or sleeping children. That's the Manananggal's favorite prey. Villagers tell of waking to the sound of slurping above their beds, only to find streaks of blood on the ceiling where the creature fed on an unborn child through the mother's navel. But the Aswang's horrors don't end there. Some take the form of dogs with eerily human eyes, licking their chops near funeral processions. Others mimic beautiful strangers, luring travelers into the jungle with promises of romance only to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth when it's too late to run. For generations, Filipinos have fought back with simple but potent defenses. Strings of garlic hang in doorways, mirrors are placed beneath beds to reflect the creature's true form, and salt is scattered on windowsills, a substance so pure it burns the Aswang's flesh like acid. There are tales of hunters catching a suspicious neighbor burying a clay jar in the moonlight, only to smash it open and find it pulsing with blackened organs, the Aswang's hidden life force. What makes these stories so enduring isn't just the horror, it's the intimacy. The Aswang isn't some distant terror. It's the midwife who delivered you, the butcher who sells you meat, the quiet widow at the edge of town. In a land where community is everything, the greatest fear isn't the monster out there. It's the monster right beside you, smiling, waiting for the sun to set. The streets of Qing Dynasty China held a terror that didn't slither or stalk, it hopped. The Jiangshi, or stiff corpse, wasn't some spectral ghost or fanged demon. It was a reanimated dead body, its limbs locked rigid by rigor mortis, forced to move with jerking, mechanical hops as if pulled by invisible strings. According to folklore, these creatures arose when dark magic or improper burial rituals disrupted a soul's journey to the afterlife, leaving it trapped in a decaying shell. Travelers whispered of encountering Jiangshi on remote mountain roads at night. their paper talismans marked with sealing spells fluttering from their foreheads as they bounded after the living. Unlike Western vampires, Jiangshi didn't drink blood with elegance. They sucked the life force, or kai, straight from their victims through a single breath, leaving bodies withered and cold. Some legends claimed they were created when a corpse was transported home for burial, but the journey was interrupted, forcing the soul to animate its own remains. Others said greedy grave robbers triggered curses that woke the dead, their stolen treasures still clutched in stiff fingers. Taoist priests developed elaborate methods to stop them. Mirrors hung on doors would reveal their true nature, while bags of rice or coins scattered on the ground forced the Jiangshi to pause and count each grain, a tedious distraction that could buy time to escape. The most potent weapon, a slip of paper inscribed with sacred characters, slapped onto the creature's forehead to freeze it mid-hop. Modern horror films like Mr. Vampire turned the Jiangshi into pop culture icons, blending their eerie movements with dark comedy. But the original legends carried a grim warning: disrespect the dead, and they might just come hopping back. The Jiangshi wasn't just a monster, it was a reminder that death demanded reverence and that some doors, once opened, couldn't be closed without a fight. In the frozen forests of the Algonquian tribes, where winter winds cut like knives and snowdrifts bury entire cabins, there's a name so dangerous, even whispering it could call its attention: the Wendigo. This isn't just another monster story. It's a warning carved into the bones of survival itself, a cautionary tale about what happens when hunger twists the human soul into something unrecognizable. Picture a creature taller than the tallest pine, its skeletal body stretched taut over jagged bones, skin gray and cracked like old bark. Antlers twist from its skull not as a crown, but as a grotesque mockery of the deer it once might have been. Its lips are perpetually bloody, not from feeding, but from chewing its own lips in endless, insatiable hunger. The Wendigo doesn't just crave flesh, it's cursed to forever starve, no matter how much it devours. And the worst part, it wasn't born a monster, it was made. According to legends passed down through generations, the Wendigo begins as a person, maybe a hunter lost in a blizzard, or a desperate villager facing starvation during the long, merciless winters. When they resort to cannibalism, breaking the most sacred of taboos, something inside them snaps. The act of consuming human flesh doesn't just damn their soul, it transforms them, warping their body into a physical manifestation of their bottomless greed. Some say the Wendigo's heart is made of ice, pounding with a hunger that can never be warmed. But the terror of the Wendigo isn't confined to folklore. In the early 20th century, colonial doctors documented cases of Wendigo psychosis, a rare but horrifying condition where sufferers became convinced they were turning into the creature, driven by delusions of their own insatiable hunger. One of the most chilling accounts comes from a Cree trapper named Swift Runner, who, during the starvation winter of 1879, slaughtered and ate his entire family despite having food supplies nearby. When questioned, he claimed the Wendigo's voice had whispered to him in the night, urging him to feast. What makes the Wendigo legend so enduring isn't just its grotesque imagery, it's the uncomfortable truth it carries. This isn't just a story about a monster lurking in the woods. It's a mirror held up to humanity's darkest impulses: greed, desperation, and the lengths we'll go to survive. The Algonquian elders didn't just fear the Wendigo, they feared becoming it. That's why speaking its name was forbidden, why rituals existed to banish even the thought of it from one's mind. Because in the endless white of winter, when the wind howls like a starving beast, the line between man and monster isn't as solid as we'd like to believe. Modern horror has resurrected the Wendigo in films like Ravenous and Antlers, but the original legend cuts deeper. It's not about jump scares or gore. It's about the slow, creeping realization that the real horror isn't out there in the dark. It's the hunger inside us all, waiting for the right moment or the wrong choice to wake up. Across the dry plains of Puerto Rico and the scorching dunes of Namibia, two very different creatures haunt the night, one with needle-like fangs, the other with leathery wings. Though separated by an ocean, both the chupacabra and the Namibian flying snake share something terrifying. They're predators that defy explanation, blurring the line between myth and something far more unsettling. The chupacabra, or goat sucker, first clawed its way into modern folklore in the 1990s when farmers in Puerto Rico began finding their livestock drained of blood, each corpse marked by 2 precise puncture wounds. Witnesses described a creature unlike anything in nature, a hairless, reptilian beast with spines running down its back, glowing red eyes, and a hunger that targeted not just the flesh of animals, but their very lifeblood. Some accounts claimed it moved on 2 legs like a demonic kangaroo, while others swore it slithered on all 4s like a malformed coyote. But the chupacabra wasn't content to stay confined to one island. Soon, reports spread across Latin America, Mexico, Chile, even the southern United States. In Texas, ranchers found chickens and rabbits completely exsanguinated, their bodies untouched except for those telltale holes. Scientists offered rational explanations: mange-ridden coyotes, diseased wild dogs, even mass hysteria. Yet the legend persisted, fed by grainy photos and whispered stories of encounters with something that shouldn't exist. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, the Himba people of Namibia tell of a different terror, a flying serpent known as the Kalahari cryptid. Unlike the chupacabra's ground-based slaughter, this creature strikes from above. Witnesses describe a winged snake, its body glistening like oil in the sun, that swoops down to snatch villagers and livestock alike. Some say it moves silently, its shadow the only warning before it strikes. Others claim it emits a high-pitched shriek, paralyzing its prey with fear before its talons close around them. Could there be a biological basis for these nightmares? Some researchers suggest the chupacabra might be linked to real-life predators suffering from extreme mange, their gaunt, hairless bodies resembling something alien. As for the Namibian flying snake, theories range from misidentified bat species to exaggerated accounts of large monitor lizards leaping from trees. But when you're standing in a moonlit field, hearing the rustle of something moving just beyond sight, scientific explanations offer little comfort. Perhaps what makes these cryptids endure isn't their grotesque appearances, but the fear they represent, the unknown predator lurking just beyond the edge of human understanding. The chupacabra embodies the dread of something violating the sanctity of the farm, the place where food and safety should be guaranteed. The flying serpent taps into an older fear, one written into our bones since the first humans looked up at the sky and wondered what might be looking back. In a world where satellites map every inch of the planet, these creatures remind us that some shadows still haven't been chased away. Whether they're flesh and blood animals twisted by rumor or something far older, they've already won in one way. They've made us afraid to walk alone in the dark. The forests of feudal Japan hold a specter as beautiful as she is deadly, a woman with skin as pale as fresh snow, robes whiter than moonlight, and eyes that freeze the blood in your veins. She is Yuki Anna, the Snow Woman, a ghost who drifts through blizzards like a living storm, her presence heralded only by the sudden hush of wind and the crunch of ice underfoot. Her origins are shrouded in the mists of time, but the most haunting version comes from Edo period folktales. Long ago, a young woodcutter named Minakichi stumbled upon her during a merciless winter storm. She loomed over him, her breath like fog, as she raised a skeletal hand to claim his life, then paused. Some say it was his youth that stayed her hand. Others whisper she saw her own loneliness reflected in his eyes. She spared him on one condition: he must never speak of her, not even to his own wife. Years passed. Minakichi married a woman named Oyuki, whose beauty was as chilling as it was captivating: pale skin, a voice like wind through pines. One night, as snow piled against their door, he broke his vow. He told her of the spectral woman who had spared him. Oyuki's face darkened, Her body trembled, then dissolved like mist, her true form emerging as the Yuki Ana. "Foolish man," she whispered, frost creeping up the walls. "I gave you warmth, a home, even love, and this is how you repay me." Some versions say she killed him then and there. Others claim she vanished into the storm, leaving him to wither in guilt, forever searching the snowflakes for her face. What makes Yuki Ana endure isn't just her cruelty, it's her duality. She isn't merely a monster, she's winter itself, beautiful enough to mesmerize, lethal enough to kill without remorse. In her, the Japanese saw nature's indifference, the blizzard that buries a village, the avalanche that erases a path. Yet there's tragedy too. She's often portrayed as a lost soul, bound to the cold by betrayal or heartbreak, eternally punishing others for sins she can't forget. Artists have captured her haunting elegance for centuries, from ukiyo-e prints to modern anime like Demon Slayer, where she appears as a demon mourning her human past. But the oldest tales carry the deepest chill. They warn travelers not to trust the snow's quiet beauty, because somewhere in the whirl of white, Yuki Ana is waiting. And by the time you see her smile, it's already too late. The next time you walk through falling snow and feel an unnatural stillness, listen closely. That whisper isn't the wind, it's her sighing your name, testing whether your heart is warm enough to keep. In the murky billabongs and winding rivers of Australia, where the water glistens like oil under the midday sun, something waits beneath the surface, something older than the first human footfall on that ancient continent. The Aboriginal peoples whisper its name with a mix of reverence and dread, the Bunyip. This isn't just a monster story, it's a living warning carved into the land itself. A lesson as old as time about the dangers lurking where the water grows dark and still. Descriptions of the Bunyip shift like ripples on a pond. Some say it resembles a monstrous seal, its body slick and bloated, with black eyes that reflect nothing. Others describe it more like a feral dog, but twisted, elongated limbs, a gaping mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, and a cry that echoes across the water like the wail of a drowned child. The Wemba Wemba people depict it with feathers and a duck-like bill, while the Ngarrindjeri warn of a creature covered in shaggy fur, its claws long enough to drag a full-grown man beneath the surface without a splash. What unites these accounts isn't the creature's form, but its hunger. The Bunyip is a devourer, a thing that rises from the depths to claim the unwary children who wander too close to the water's edge. Hunters who pause to drink from the wrong pool, anyone foolish enough to ignore the old stories. Elders used tales of the Bunyip to teach respect for the land, a reminder that nature isn't just beautiful, it's alive with dangers seen and unseen. But the Bunyip isn't merely a cautionary tale. Some scholars suggest these legends may have roots in real encounters with now extinct megafauna, like the Diprotodon, a massive prehistoric marsupial whose fossils litter the Australian outback. Others point to the haunting cries of bitterns or the eerie silhouettes of platypuses at dusk, ordinary creatures magnified by fear and folklore. Yet for all the theories, the Bunyip endures because it taps into something primal. It's the shadow in the reeds, the splash with no source, the feeling that you're not alone when you kneel by the water. Modern sightings still trickle in, from remote northern territory swamps to the outskirts of Sydney suburbs, where teenagers dare each other to whisper its name at midnight. Perhaps the most chilling detail isn't the teeth or the claws, but the way the Bunyip's legend adapts. It's not frozen in the past, it evolves, shifting its shape to fit new fears because some warnings never go out of style. The water might look safe, but down where the light doesn't reach, something listens, and it remembers the taste of human flesh. High in the craggy hills of Leicestershire, where the wind howls through limestone caves like a mourning song, parents once whispered a name to frighten disobedient children into bed: Black Annie's. This wasn't just any bogeyman, she was a nightmare-given form, a blue-faced hag with claws like rusted iron, eyes that glowed like dying embers, and a habit of collecting skins. Local legends describe her dwelling in a cave called Black Annie's Bower, its entrance scarred by the grooves of her nails as she scraped at the rock over centuries. By day, she might appear as a hunched old woman begging for scraps at a farmhouse door, but come nightfall, her true nature emerged. She'd stalk the edges of villages, listening for the cries of children who stayed out too late, her tattered cloak fluttering behind her like a storm cloud. Those she caught met a grisly fate, flayed alive, their hides stitched into her ragged clothing, their bones scattered across the hills like broken twigs. Some scholars trace her origins back to pagan Britain, suggesting she might be a distorted memory of Anu, an ancient Celtic goddess of sovereignty and the land. Over time, as Christianity spread, reverence for the old gods twisted into fear, their protective aspects forgotten, their darker traits magnified. The same Earth Mother who once nurtured crops became a hungry crone demanding sacrifices. Others argue Black Annie's evolved from real threats, a deranged hermit perhaps, or a particularly brutal winter famine personified. But her true power lay in her role as England's original boogeyman. Parents would point to the hills at dusk, warning that Black Annie's could stretch her arms for miles to snatch wayward children from their beds. Some versions of the tale claim she'd tan her victims' skins by hanging them on an oak tree near her cave, the branches groaning under their weight. The lesson wasn't subtle: stay inside, obey your elders, or the wild things beyond the firelight will claim you. What makes Black Annie's endure isn't just her violence, it's the intimacy of her horror. Unlike dragons or giants, she didn't live in some distant realm. She lurked in the landscape itself, her bower a real cave families would pass on market days. The folklore served a practical purpose, enforcing community rules in an era when wandering too far could mean death by exposure or wolves. But beneath the scare tactics lies a darker truth. Sometimes we create monsters not just to explain the unknown, but to justify the boundaries we dare not cross ourselves. Today, her name has faded from common memory, but echoes remain in regional rhymes and the odd warning still muttered in Leicester's older villages. Next time you hear wind whistle through a crack in the rocks, listen closely. That isn't just the breeze, it's the sound of something old and hungry licking its lips in the dark. In the humid nights of Southeast Asia, where the air clings thick as sweat and palm leaves rustle with unseen movement, two terrors take flight, not as whole creatures, but as monstrous, disembodied heads trailing glistening ropes of organs beneath them. The Penanggalan of Malaysia and the Krasu of Thailand might be separated by borders, but their horrors share the same grotesque silhouette against the moon. A woman's severed head, her hair writhing like serpents, her stomach still attached by a grotesque tangle of intestines and veins, pulsing as they search for fresh blood. By day, these monsters wear human faces. The Penanggalan might be your village midwife, her hands skilled in childbirth, her smile reassuring. The Krasu could pass for a shy neighbor, tending her cooking pot over a low fire. But when darkness falls, their heads tear free from their bodies with a wet, ripping sound, leaving behind a headless corpse that must be hidden before sunrise. Their dangling entrails glow faintly in the dark, illuminating their path as they float toward their favorite prey, pregnant women and newborns. The Penanggalan slips through open windows, lowering itself over sleeping mothers-to-be, its elongated tongue lapping at the amniotic fluid or the blood of fresh childbirth. In Thailand, the Krasu prefers to hover near livestock pens, draining cows or chickens dry before moving on to human victims, its digestive organs still dripping from the last meal. Some say the Krasu's curse begins with a woman practicing black magic, while the Penanggalan's origins are darker still, once an ordinary woman who bathed in cursed vinegar during a ritual, only to find her head wrenching free of her body each night, hungry and unstoppable. But these horrors aren't invincible. Across Malaysia, villagers line their rooftops with thorny pulai branches, knowing the Penanggalan's trailing guts will snag on the spikes, leaving her tangled and vulnerable to daylight. In Thailand, crushed glass is mixed into window frames and pregnant women sleep with sprigs of maca leaves under their pillows, a scent the Krasu supposedly can't stomach. Some stories even tell of hunters tracking the Krasu back to its abandoned body, salting the neck stump to prevent reattachment and leaving the head to wither with the dawn. What makes these legends so chilling isn't just the gore, it's the intimacy of the betrayal. These monsters aren't strangers, they're the women you trust with your health, your food, your children. They twist the sacred act of childbirth into something predatory, turning the caretaker into the predator. And perhaps that's why, even today, you'll still find thorny vines coiled over doorways in rural villages, not because anyone truly believes in the Penanggalan anymore, but because some fears sink so deep into culture, they outlive the very monsters that inspired them. The next time you see a bird's nest of thorns tucked into a porch corner, look closer. That's not just superstition. It's the echo of a time when the night didn't just hold danger, it held floating heads with wet, red ropes behind them, drifting silently toward an open window. Off the storm-lashed coasts of Scotland's Orkney Islands, where the sea foam hisses like a living thing and the peat bogs exhale a rotten sweetness, there's a name so feared it's only whispered between clenched teeth, the Nukkalavi. This isn't just a monster, it's an abomination stitched together from nightmares, a thing so vile even describing its form feels like a violation of nature's laws. Picture a horse but strip away the skin, leaving ropes of muscle glistening with veins that pulse black blood. Now fuse its back to the torso of a man, equally flayed, his arms long enough to drag knuckles through the tide pools, his mouth stretching ear to ear in a lipless grin. The Nukkalavi's eyes bulge like blisters, lidless and yellow, and its breath carries the stench of rotting kelp and sulfur, a stink so potent it wilts crops and sickens livestock. Worst of all, it's not just a predator, it's a curse made flesh, a harbinger of droughts, plagues, and fishing boats that never return. The Orcadians knew better than to speak of it during summer and harvest seasons when the Nukkalavi's power was strongest. Even saying its name aloud risked drawing its attention, like a shark to blood in the water. Fishermen would knot ropes with iron nails and hang them over doorways, knowing the creature's hatred of metal. Others smeared their thresholds with peat ash, a feeble but fervent attempt to mask the scent of human presence. The few who claimed to survive an encounter described a sound like wet meat slapping against rock as the Nukkalavi galloped across the waves, its single, cyclopean eye fixed on the shore. But what makes the Nukkalavi truly terrifying isn't just its appearance, it's the helplessness it embodies. This isn't a monster you can fight or outsmart. It's a force of nature as inevitable as the tides. When it emerged from its underwater lair, the islanders could only huddle inside, listening to the rasp of its breath against their walls, praying the dawn would come before it chose to unhinge its jaw and exhale pestilence over their fields. Some legends claim it's the last remnant of an older, crueler world, a relic from when gods and monsters battled for dominion over the earth. Others say it's the manifestation of the sea's wrath, a punishment for taking too much from the waters without giving back. Yet for all its horror, the Nukkalavi has one weakness: fresh water. A single drop from a highland stream could send it shrieking back to the depths, its flesh sizzling like grease on a hot griddle. This detail hints at something deeper, a balance between salt and fresh, corruption and purity, a logic even monsters must obey. Today, you won't hear the Nukkalavi's name tossed around Orkney pubs. But walk the cliffs at dusk when the mist rolls in, and you might feel it a prickle on your neck, a coppery taste in your mouth. That's not just the sea air. It's the weight of centuries-old fear, the unshakable sense that something out there still remembers the taste of human suffering, and it's hungry. The night air along the Rio Grande grows heavy with more than just humidity. It carries the sound of weeping so raw, so full of despair, it chills the blood even in the height of summer. La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, is more than just a ghost story in Latin America. She's a wound that never healed, a tragedy etched into the landscape itself. Her tale begins with betrayal, but it doesn't end with death. It lingers like the scent of river mud and wet cotton in every sob that echoes through the reeds. Different versions of her story ripple across Mexico and the American Southwest, but the core remains the same. A beautiful woman, abandoned by her lover, drowns their children in a fit of rage. Some say she hoped to win him back by eliminating his heirs to another woman. Others claim she acted purely from madness, her mind shattered by grief. But the moment their small bodies slipped beneath the water, clarity returned, and with it, unbearable guilt. She died by her own hand soon after, and now her spirit is doomed to wander riverbanks for eternity, screaming for the children she can never recover. The roots of this horror stretch back further than colonialism. Before La Llorona, there was Cihuacotl, the Aztec serpent woman who wailed through the streets of Tenochtitlan, foretelling disaster. Spanish chroniclers wrote of hearing her cries before Cortés arrived, as if the land itself knew conquest was coming. Over time, the two legends intertwined, Cihuacotl's prophetic sorrow blending with the story of a mother's unforgivable sin, creating something new. Now, La Llorona serves as both a cautionary tale and a mirror. Parents warn their children not to wander near the water after dark, lest she mistake them for her own lost little ones and drag them under. But beneath the scare tactics lies a darker truth. She's the embodiment of every mother's deepest fear, the moment love twists into something unrecognizable. Sightings of La Llorona are as varied as the places she haunts. In some accounts, she's a spectral figure in a white gown, her hands clutching empty air. Others describe her as faceless, her features eroded by centuries of weeping. A few chilling reports tell of a woman with hollow sockets where her eyes should be, her dress soaked through, leaving trails of water that never dry. The one constant, that cry, a sound said to paralyze even the bravest soul, a mix of anguish and rage that doesn't quite sound human anymore. Modern retellings, like the film The Curse of La Llorona, have brought her to global audiences, but they often miss the heart of the legend. This isn't just about a ghost who snatches children. It's about the weight of choices, the fragility of the mind, and the way grief can fossilize into something monstrous. Next time you hear weeping near the water's edge, don't just run. Listen closely. That's not just a ghost you're hearing. It's the echo of every broken heart that ever loved too much and the terrible things that love can drive us to do. In the ancient forests and royal courts of Hindu mythology, where gods and mortals walk side by side, there exists a predator so cunning, it wears the faces of your closest allies only to peel them away when your guard drops. Meet the Rakshasa, a demonic shapeshifter born from rage and darkness, its very name meaning the destroyer. These aren't mindless monsters. They're scholars of suffering, masters of illusion, and in some tales, even kings who rule human cities from gilded thrones, their true nature hidden behind silken smiles. Their origins are as twisted as their appetites. Some texts describe them as born from the breath of the creator god Brahma when he was consumed by wrath. Others claim they sprang from the footsteps of the goddess Nariti, whose domain is decay and misfortune. But one thread runs through every version. Rakshasas are creatures of corruption, thriving on chaos. Their powers read like a nightmare's checklist. They can vanish into smoke, grow to the size of mountains, or shrink small enough to slip through keyholes. Some command armies of lesser demons, while others whisper curses potent enough to wither crops or sour a mother's milk. The epics paint them as existential threats. In the Mahabharata, the Rakshasa king Hidimba disguises himself as a handsome traveler to lure victims, only for his sister to fall in love with the human hero Bhima, sparking a blood feud. The Ramayana centers on Ravana, the 10-headed Rakshasa emperor who kidnaps Sita, setting the stage for an apocalyptic war. What makes these demons so terrifying isn't just their strength, it's their intellect. Ravana wasn't just a brute, he was a scholar who mastered the Vedas, a musician who invented the lute, and a ruler whose kingdom of Lanka glittered with gold. His evil wasn't mindless, it was chosen, a perversion of greatness that made him all the more dangerous. Yet Rakshasas aren't always villains. Some, like Vibhishana, Ravana's brother, defect to the side of righteousness, proving even demons have free will. This moral complexity bleeds into modern portrayals. In Indian horror story, Rakshasas manipulate entire villages through paranoia, while video games like Smite reimagine them as playable anti-heroes. Even Bollywood dances on this edge. The 2018 film Tumbad features a Rakshasa-like entity hoarding cursed gold, its greed mirroring human folly. What lingers after these stories isn't just the gore, though yes, their preferred meal is raw human flesh, gnawed messily from the bone. It's the unsettling question they pose: how thin is the line between monster and king? When a Rakshasa rules wisely by day and devours subjects by night, which is the mask, the beast, or the benefactor? Perhaps that's why their legends endure. They don't just haunt our stories, they hold up a warped mirror to the darkest corners of power, whispering a warning as old as time: trust no throne too easily. The most elegant hands might still be hiding claws. The burial mounds of ancient Scandinavia hide more than just bones and rusted swords. They house the Draugr, the restless dead who refuse to stay down. These aren't your typical shambling corpses. Norse sagas describe them as swollen to twice human size, their skin blackened like old leather, their strength enough to crush a man's skull with one hand. Unlike ghosts, they're terrifyingly physical, bursting from their graves to stalk the living with a singular obsession, guarding their treasure. Because in Viking culture, wealth wasn't just for life, it was meant to follow you into the afterlife, and woe to anyone foolish enough to steal from the dead. One of the most chilling accounts comes from the Grettir saga, where the hero Grettir battles Glamour, a shepherd turned Draugr after dying with unresolved rage. The creature doesn't just kill, it corrupts. Those who fight Draugr and survive often wither soon after, their bones bruising from the inside out, as if death itself had marked them during the struggle. Some Draugr could even shape-shift, appearing as mist or animals to stalk their prey, while others dragged entire farmsteads into the earth with them, their graves groaning with the weight of stolen livestock and screaming victims beneath the soil. Yet for all their savagery, Draugr weren't mindless. They followed twisted rules. Many could only be killed by decapitation, their heads then placed between their knees to prevent reanimation. Iron and runestones were said to ward them off, and in rare cases, a Draugr might even bargain, offering hidden gold in exchange for proper burial rites. But cross one, and you'd learn why Norse warriors slept with axes at their bedsides. Their wrath wasn't just violence, it was a warning etched in blood and broken bone. Some treasures cost more than their worth. Across the world in feudal Japan, a different kind of undead horror roamed the battlefields, one built not from single corpses, but from the collective anguish of thousands. The Gashadokuro, or starving skeleton, stands 15 times taller than a man, its body a patchwork of bones from soldiers and peasants who died unnoticed, their remains left to rot unburied. By moonless nights, these skeletal titans rise, their hollow eyes burning with ghostly fire, their teeth clacking like wooden drums as they stalk the countryside. Unlike the Draugr's physicality, the Gashadokuro is spectral yet tangible, a paradox of bone and spirit. Its fingers, each as long as a spear, pluck victims from rice paddies or tear the roofs off houses to pluck out sleeping families. The most horrifying detail, its bite. Those caught in its grip report hearing the screams of the dead inside its ribcage before its jaws snap shut, decapitating them in one clean crunch. Some legends say if you listen closely when the wind howls through bamboo forests, that's not wind at all, it's the Gashadokuro's victims, still wailing within its monstrous frame. What binds these two horrors across continents isn't just their undead nature, it's the cultural fears they embody. The Draugr personifies the Viking dread of dishonoring the dead, of greed outpacing respect. The Gashadokuro, meanwhile, is Japan's haunting reminder of war's true cost, not glory, but anonymous suffering given monstrous form. One guards gold, the other is gold, forged from the unpaid debt of forgotten lives. Both whisper the same terrible truth: the past never really stays buried. Sometimes it climbs out and it's hungry. On the windswept hills of Ireland, where mist curls like smoke over stone fences and the evening light turns gold just before dusk, there's a creature that refuses to be pinned down literally. The Púca is chaos wrapped in fur and feathers, a shapeshifter as likely to lead you home safely as it is to toss you into a ditch for its own amusement. One moment it's a sleek black horse with glowing yellow eyes, daring you to climb onto its back only to gallop headlong toward a cliff before vanishing at the edge, leaving you shaken but unharmed. The next, it might be a ragged goat perched on a crumbling church wall, its laugh like rocks tumbling down a hillside. Unlike other Celtic spirits, the Púca defies easy labels. It's not entirely evil, but it's far from benevolent. Some farmers swore it ruined their crops by breathing blight onto the grain the night before harvest. Others claimed it guided lost children out of foggy moors with an uncanny sense of direction. This duality made it both feared and respected. Leave an offering, a handful of berries, a sip of milk left by the doorstep, and the Púca might bless your field with an unusually abundant yield. Ignore it, and you'd wake to find your haystacks scattered across 3 counties, your cows milk dry, or your shoes nailed to the ceiling. The most famous tale comes from County Down, where a drunkard stumbling home at midnight encountered a gigantic rabbit with teeth like splintered bone. It challenged him to a race, hopping backward at impossible speed. When the man, too proud to refuse, gave chase, he found himself sprinting in circles until dawn, his pockets full of mud and his hat replaced with a rotten turnip. The lesson: the Púca doesn't just play tricks, it exposes human folly, punishing greed, pride, or foolishness with a twist of dark humor. Yet for all its mischief, the Púca holds a strange honor in Celtic tradition. November 1st, the festival of Samhain, was considered its sacred night. Leftover food was set outside as a peace offering, and farmers avoided certain paths known to be its roaming grounds. Some even believed that if you spoke respectfully to the Púca, it might grant you a glimpse of the future, though never without a price. One story tells of a woman who asked for a vision of her unborn child. The Púca obliged, showing her a son grown tall and strong, then revealed the battlefield where he'd one day fall. What makes the Púca timeless isn't just its antics, it's the raw unpredictability it represents. Life in ancient Ireland was harsh, ruled by storms, famine, and invaders. The Púca embodied that capriciousness, a reminder that laughter and cruelty often wear the same face. Even today, when a sudden gust knocks your hat into a puddle or your car won't start for no reason, Irish elders might wink and mutter, "Ah, the Púca's about." Some legends fade, but this one, it's still out there, grinning in the hedgerows, waiting to remind us that not all magic wears a kind disguise. In the shadowed riverbanks and murky pools of Zulu folklore, where the air hums with the whispers of ancestral spirits, lurks a creature small in stature but immense in malice, the Tikalosh. This dwarf-like water spirit stands no taller than a child, its body covered in mangy fur, its eyes glowing red like embers in the dark, but don't let its size fool you. The Tikalosh is a weapon, often sent by witches or sangomas to exact revenge, its tiny hands capable of inflicting nightmares, illness, or even death. What makes the Tikalosh truly terrifying isn't just its appearance, it's its invisibility. With a sip of a witch's potion, the creature can vanish from sight, slipping into homes undetected to torment its victims as they sleep. It crouches on chests, suffocating dreamers under the weight of unseen hands. It whispers lies into the ears of the vulnerable, driving them to madness. Some say it steals breath from infants or tugs at the limbs of the elderly until their bones ache with a cold no fire can warm. But the Zulu people didn't cower helplessly. They fought back with ingenuity, devising bizarre and brilliant defenses. The most famous, elevating beds on bricks or cans. The logic was simple. The Tikalosh, for all its magic, couldn't stretch beyond its natural height. By raising a bed just a few feet off the ground, you placed yourself beyond its grasp. Others smeared their doorways with ash, knowing the creature's obsession with cleanliness would force it to stop and lick its filthy feet clean before entering, buying precious time to flee or call for help. Yet the Tikalosh's power isn't purely physical, it's psychological. In rural villages, unexplained misfortunes, a sudden sickness, a failed crop, a child's panic in the night are often blamed on its influence. The creature thrives on fear, growing stronger the more its name is whispered in dread. Modern sightings still trickle in, from miners in Johannesburg claiming to see red eyes in the tunnels to farmers finding their livestock mysteriously drained of blood. Perhaps the most unsettling detail isn't the creature itself, but what it represents, the dark side of human agency. Unlike a ghost or demon, the Tikalosh isn't a random force of nature. It's a tool wielded by those with grudges to settle. In a culture where witchcraft is still deeply feared, the Tikalosh is the ultimate proof that malice, when given form, doesn't need to be big to be devastating. So the next time you hear a faint scratching under your bed or feel an unexplained chill in the night, don't dismiss it. Grab some bricks, lift that mattress higher. Because in the world of Zulu legend, the smallest threats often cast the longest shadows. The dense forests of Transylvania hold more than just wolves and whispering pines. They guard the restless graves of the Strigoi, Romania's answer to the vampire, and the creatures that likely whispered Bram Stoker's Dracula into existence. Unlike the polished aristocrats of Gothic fiction, the Strigoi are raw, feral things, corpses bloated with stolen blood, their fingers tipped with dirt from clawing through 6 feet of earth to reach the surface. These aren't charming seducers, they're abominations that stink of the grave, their lips cracked and blackened from feasting on the living. What sets the Strigoi apart from other undead is their origin. Some are born, not made seventh children of seventh children, cursed from birth to walk the line between life and death. Others were once ordinary souls who died without proper rites, their spirits denied peace, or worse, those who dabbled in dark magic and paid the ultimate price. When they rise, it's not with a whisper but with a guttural snarl. They don't just drink blood, they gorge, leaving victims so drained their veins collapse like withered vines. And their hunger isn't limited to humans. Strigoi are known to slaughter livestock by the dozen, their teeth tearing through wool and hide to lap at the steaming blood beneath. But the Romanians who have lived under their shadow for centuries didn't just cower. They fought back with methods as brutal as the monsters themselves. A suspected Strigoi's grave would be pried open at high noon, its corpse examined for the telltale signs, nails grown into claws, a mouth smeared with fresh blood, skin unnaturally plump from feeding. If confirmed, the remedies were merciless. A wooden stake through the heart, yes, but not just any wood. It had to be hawthorn or oak, carved with crosses and driven in with a single, unflinching blow. Garlic wasn't just hung in doorways, it was stuffed into the corpse's mouth, its pungent purity believed to choke the evil inside. Some villagers went further, decapitating the body and placing the head between its knees, or burning the remains entirely and scattering the ashes in running water, ensuring no part could reunite. The connection to Dracula is undeniable, but Strigoi lore runs darker than fiction. While Stoker's count sipped wine from crystal goblets, the Strigoi wallowed in their own decay, their very existence a mockery of death's natural order. Even today, Romania's rural elders warn against lingering near cemeteries after dusk, lest you hear the wet, grating sound of something digging its way out. Because unlike Dracula, the Strigoi don't need an invitation to enter your home. They only need you to forget, just for one night, to lock your door. The lochs and rivers of Scotland ripple with more than just fish and foam. They hide the Kelpie, a shape-shifting predator as beautiful as it is cruel. This water horse often appears as a sleek black stallion, its mane tangled with riverweed, its coat glistening like wet obsidian. At first glance, it might seem like a lost mount standing docile by the water's edge, even offering a mournful whinny to lure the unwary closer. But touch its hide and you'll find your hand sticks fast as if glued to its skin. With a scream that sounds eerily human, the Kelpie drags its victim into the depths, drowning them before devouring everything but the liver, which floats to the surface like a grim receipt of its feast. What makes the Kelpie especially sinister isn't just its method of hunting, it's the intimacy of its deception. In some tales, it takes the form of a handsome stranger, his clothes perpetually damp, his hair smelling of algae. He'll charm a young traveler into sitting beside him by the riverbank, only to seize them with inhuman strength when the water's edge is near. Other stories describe it as a white mare, seemingly gentle, inviting children to climb onto its back, a back that inexplicably lengthens to accommodate every new rider, until it suddenly bolts for the water, its sticky hide ensuring no one can jump free in time. But cross the Irish Sea and the Kelpie's cousin becomes something far more terrifying. The Uisht, pronounced Ushkia, shares the Kelpie's equine allure, but its hunger is boundless. While the Kelpie prefers rivers and lochs, the Uisht rules the open ocean, its strength enough to drag entire ships beneath the waves. It doesn't just drown its prey, it dissolves them. Victims are said to liquefy inside its stomach, their screams bubbling up through the creature's gills like macabre foam. The most chilling account comes from the Isle of Lewis, where a group of fishermen mistook an Uisht for a runaway stallion and tried to stable it. By morning, the barn was a slaughterhouse. Only one man survived, hiding in the rafters as the creature's skin split open to reveal rows of teeth lining its flanks, grinding what was left of his companions into slurry. Survivors of encounters, if any exist, claim these creatures aren't just animals. They're ancient, intelligent, and spiteful. The Kelpie might leave a single witness alive to spread fear, while the Uisht seems to take pleasure in the hunt itself, playing with its food like a cat with a mouse. Defenses against them are as old as the stories themselves. Iron nails driven into a stable door might keep an Uisht at bay, while Scottish mothers still warn their children to look for waterweed tangled in a horse's mane, the Kelpie's calling card. But the most effective tactic: never trust a creature too beautiful to be real, especially when it stands where the water meets the land, because in the end, that's their true weapon. Not teeth or strength, but the unbearable loneliness of humans always willing to believe, just this once, that something magical might actually choose them. In the quiet churchyards of medieval Germany, where the earth was often packed too hastily over fresh graves, the dead didn't always stay silent. Among the most feared was the Nachzara, literally, the after-devourer, a corpse that refused to rest, its hunger so insatiable it gnawed at its own burial shroud in the darkness of the grave. But this wasn't just a grotesque spectacle. Every bite it took was believed to have dire consequences for the living, as if the act of chewing somehow siphoned life from distant victims. When a plague swept through a village, whispers followed. Had someone been buried wrong? Was a Nachzara feeding somewhere beneath their feet? Unlike the vampires of Eastern Europe, the Nachzara didn't rise to stalk the night. Its terror was subtler, more insidious. It worked its evil from the coffin, its muffled chewing echoing upward through the soil like a death knell. The signs were unmistakable: a grave that appeared disturbed, a shroud found tattered around the corpse's mouth, or worse, a body discovered with cheeks still moving as if caught mid-meal. In some accounts, the Nachzara's victims wasted away inexplicably, their health deteriorating in lockstep with the creature's relentless feasting. The link to medieval plagues wasn't coincidental. As entire villages succumbed to the Black Death, desperate survivors searched for explanations beyond miasma or divine wrath. The Nachzara became a physical manifestation of their fear, a scapegoat for the inexplicable. If a family died one by one, it wasn't just bad luck. It was the work of a hungry corpse chewing its way through the fabric separating life from death. But the Germans of the Middle Ages didn't just fear the Nachzara, they fought back with rituals as inventive as they were macabre. One of the most unsettling methods involved prying open the suspected corpse's jaws and stuffing its mouth with a lemon or a brick. The logic was grimly practical. If the creature couldn't chew, it couldn't spread death. Other countermeasures included decapitation, the head placed between the knees to prevent reanimation, or coins laid over the eyes, not just as payment for the afterlife, but as weights to keep the eyelids shut, because some believed the Nachzara could kill with a single malevolent glance. What makes the Nachzara stand out isn't just its horrifying imagery, but the psychological terror it represents. In an era before germ theory, disease was a spectral force, invisible and omnipresent. The Nachzara gave it teeth, something tangible to blame, to locate, and ultimately to destroy. Even today, when archaeologists unearth medieval skeletons with rocks wedged between their jaws, it's a stark reminder of how fear can shape the rituals of the living long after the dead have fallen silent. Perhaps the most haunting lesson of the Nachzara isn't about the monsters we invent, but the ones we unknowingly become. In times of plague, when grief and desperation fester, it's easy to see how the line between victim and villain could blur. The Nachzara wasn't just a corpse that refused to rot. It was a mirror held up to the living, reflecting their darkest suspicions back at them. And in that reflection, we're forced to ask, when the world grows dark, what kind of hunger might we unleash? In the dense rainforests of Ghana and Togo, where the night hums with the chorus of insects and the air hangs thick with moisture, there's a flicker of light that doesn't belong to any ordinary firefly. The Adze of Folklore is something far more sinister, a creature that dances between forms, shifting from a glowing insect to a human-like figure with teeth like shards of obsidian. By day, it might walk among villagers indistinguishable from any other person, but when darkness falls, its true nature emerges. Its body splits open, wings unfurling with a sound like tearing parchment, and it takes to the skies, its bioluminescent glow a deadly lure for the unsuspecting. What makes the Adze so terrifying isn't just its shape-shifting, it's the way it feeds. This isn't a vampire that merely drinks blood. It consumes life itself, slipping through keyholes or under doors to perch on sleeping victims, its proboscis-like tongue piercing their skin with surgical precision. The bite is painless, almost soothing, lulling the victim into a deeper sleep as the Adze drains their vitality. By morning, the victim might wake weakened, their skin sallow, their energy sapped, unaware they've been marked. Because the Adze doesn't just take, it leaves something behind: disease. You elders spoke of entire villages struck by sudden, inexplicable illnesses after sightings of these glowing creatures. Fevers that burned like wildfire, wasting sicknesses that hollowed out strong men in days, and nightmares so vivid they blurred the line between sleep and waking. The Adze became a spectral scapegoat for epidemics, a way to explain the invisible horrors of malaria, yellow fever, or other mosquito-borne plagues that swept through the region. But unlike modern medicine, which points to microbes, the Yu saw agency in these outbreaks, a malicious intelligence behind the suffering. The most chilling accounts tell of Adze possession. Some victims, after repeated attacks, would begin to change. Their eyes took on a glassy sheen, their speech grew slow and deliberate, and they developed an aversion to sunlight. Eventually, they'd vanish into the forest, only to return weeks later as something else entirely. These transformed Adze retained their human memories, their relationships, even their voices, but their hungers were no longer their own. They'd whisper to former loved ones in the dark, coaxing them outside where the glowing swarm waited. Yet the Yu didn't suffer these horrors passively. They devised elaborate defenses, many eerily prophetic of modern mosquito nets and quarantine measures. Sleeping chambers were sealed with woven mats treated with bitter herbs, their scents repulsive to the Adze. Suspicious individuals, those who grew pallid or spoke of glowing dreams, were isolated. their homes encircled with ash or salt, substances believed to imprison the creature's spirit. And in some villages, hunters would leave offerings of palm wine mixed with ground yam, a concoction said to intoxicate and reveal the adze, causing it to stagger mid-flight, its human form flickering like a dying ember. What lingers after these tales isn't just the horror of possession or disease. It's the unsettling precision with which the adze myth mirrors reality. Long before science identified mosquitoes as vectors for illness, the Yu people had already imagined a creature that moved like them, struck like them, and spread death as casually as a breeze. The adze wasn't just a monster, it was a story about vulnerability, about how even the smallest, most fragile-seeming thing could carry annihilation in its wake. So the next time you see a flicker of light in the dark, pause before you reach for it. Not all that glows is gentle. Some fires exist to lure you closer. And by the time you feel the bite, it's already too late to run. The sea off Japan's coast doesn't just drown ships, it watches. Sailors whisper of the Umibōzu, a towering black specter that rises from calm waters without warning, its smooth, featureless head gleaming like wet stone, its body stretching wider than a temple gate. This is no ordinary storm spirit. It wears the silhouette of a Buddhist monk, a cruel mockery of peace, its long limbs dragging vessels into the abyss with the ease of a child overturning a toy boat. The earliest accounts come from Edo period scrolls, where fishermen described sudden, glassy swells parting to reveal the creature's inkai bulk. Unlike Western sea monsters that tear ships apart with teeth or tentacles, the Umibōzu prefers silence. It surfaces beside a hull, its hollow eyes boring into the crew before tipping the entire vessel with one apathetic push. Survivors, few as they are, speak of an unnatural cold radiating from its touch, a chill that seeps into bones long after rescue. Yet sailors didn't face this horror unprepared. Rituals emerged to appease the Umibōzu, each more desperate than the last. The most famous involved tossing empty barrels into the sea, a symbolic offering of buoyancy. Some believed the creature would grow fixated on the floating object, allowing the ship to flee. Others claimed the Umibōzu demanded tribute, not gold or food, but something stranger, human shame. Accounts tell of crews throwing personal belongings overboard, from wedding rings to prayer beads, as if the monster fed on regret as much as salt water. What makes this legend eerily plausible is its potential link to rogue waves. Modern science now recognizes these sudden, skyscraper-tall swells as real phenomena, capable of splitting ships in two. To pre-industrial sailors, such an event could only be the work of a conscious, malevolent force. The Umibōzu's monk-like form might reflect Japan's Buddhist reverence for the sea's dual nature, both giver of life and taker of it. But the most chilling detail isn't its size or strength, it's the ambiguity. Unlike demons that roar or ghosts that wail, the Umibōzu acts without sound, without motive. It doesn't feast on corpses or hoard wreckage, it simply erases. To encounter it is to stand before the ocean's indifference made manifest, a reminder that some depths don't just hide monsters, they hide the absence of reason itself. Even today, when modern sonar maps every trench and trench, fishermen still pause before tossing their first catch back into the waves. Not all traditions fade. Some simply learn to wear new disguises. Even in an age of satellite navigation and steel-hulled ships, the Umibōzu hasn't faded into myth. In 2008, a Japanese tuna trawler off the coast of Hokkaido radioed a frantic distress call describing a black pillar rising beside their vessel before their signal cut out. Rescuers found the ship capsized, its hull scarred with deep, parallel grooves. No known sea creature could leave such marks. Then in 2015, a South Korean cargo ship's crew captured grainy footage of a towering, shadowy figure looming in freakishly calm waters before their instruments malfunctioned. The video, though dismissed as a mistimed wave by skeptics, reignited debates in maritime forums. Was this the Umibōzu, or something even modern science couldn't explain? Scientists offer theories that walk the line between skepticism and spine-chilling plausibility. Giant squids, once the stuff of legend themselves, could account for some reports their massive tentacles, glimpsed in poor light, might resemble the Umibōzu's limbs. Yet even the largest squid recorded pales next to the creature's described scale. Others point to rogue waves, those walls of water that appear without warning, their sheer force capable of mimicking a deliberate attack. But why would survivors insist the wave had eyes or a silhouette resembling a monk's robe? The persistence of the Umibōzu legend speaks to something deeper than superstition. Maritime cultures from Japan to Norway share eerily similar myths of sentient seas. The Norse spoke of the Hafgufa, a living island that drowned sailors. Caribbean tales warn of the Luska, a hybrid beast that drags ships into blue holes. These stories aren't just about fear, they're about respect. The ocean remains Earth's last great mystery, its depths less mapped than the surface of Mars. When technology fails and the waves turn against you, it's human nature to see intention in the chaos. The Umibōzu endures because it embodies the sea's cruelest truth. No matter how advanced we become, we're still at its mercy. Perhaps that's why modern fishermen in Wakayama still pour sake into the waves before dawn, or why naval cadets in Tokyo are taught the old rituals alongside radar operation. The Umibōzu isn't just a monster, it's a lesson one that doesn't care if you believe in it. The sea does not forgive and it does not forget. And somewhere out there, in the space between a wave and a shadow, the black monk still waits. From the drowned woman wailing by the Rio Grande to the faceless monk rising from Japan's tides, water ghosts haunt nearly every coastal culture on Earth. La Llorona and the Umibōzu might wear different faces, but their stories share the same dark undercurrent, a warning about water's dual nature. It gives life, but it also takes swiftly and without mercy. These legends didn't just spring from imagination. They're the echoes of real drownings, shipwrecks, and floods, distilled into something with a face you can blame. When a child vanished near the riverbank, was it a tragic accident, or did La Llorona's skeletal fingers drag them under? When a trawler disappeared in calm seas, was it bad luck or the Umibōzu's indifferent hand? Then there are the child-snatchers, from Black Annie's flaying disobedient youngsters in England to the Tikalosh lurking under beds in Zulu villages. These horrors share a chilling purpose. They're the original stranger danger tales. Before Amber Alerts or child-proof locks, folklore taught children where not to wander, who not to trust, and why they should be home by dark. The monsters change names, but their message doesn't. Aswang disguise themselves as kindly neighbors. The Púca lures kids onto its back with laughter. The Bunyip waits where the reeds grow thickest. Each story is a fence around danger, built from bones and whispers. But perhaps the most fascinating pattern isn't the monsters themselves, it's how they explain the unexplainable. The ad's glowing attacks mirrored malaria's invisible menace centuries before microscopes. The Natchsara's grave chewing tied sudden deaths to burial rites when germ theory was unthinkable, and the Wendigo, a stark allegory for how hunger can strip humanity away, born from winters so harsh they drove people to unspeakable acts. These legends weren't just campfire scares, they were early science, psychology, and social law all woven together, teaching generations how to survive in a world full of unseen threats. So the next time you hear a familiar beat in a monster tale from across the globe, watery graves, stolen children, plagues with teeth, remember, you're not just listening to a story. You're hearing the voice of countless ancestors still whispering across the centuries. Be careful. Some dangers don't stay in the past. From the swollen, grave-chewing Natchsara of medieval Germany to the sky-floating horror of the Penanggalan's dripping intestines, these legends aren't just stories, they're mirrors. Each one reflects the deepest fears of the cultures that birthed them, whether it's the Wendigo's warning against the cannibalism of desperation, the Umibōzu's embodiment of the sea's cruel indifference, or La Llorona's eternal grief turned monstrous. What unites them all isn't just the chill they send down your spine, but the way they transform abstract terrors, plague, starvation, betrayal into something with teeth and claws, something you can almost see lurking at the edge of the firelight. Consider how these tales persist, evolving with each generation. The Dybbuk of Jewish folklore, once a cautionary tale about unrepented sins, now resonates in modern psychology as a metaphor for trauma that clings like a second skin. The Bunyip, born from Aboriginal reverence for the land's dangers, still whispers through Australian schoolyards when kids dare each other to swim in murky billabongs. These stories aren't relics, they're alive, adapting to new fears like the Aswang, morphing from a rural terror to an urban legend about the neighbor who seems just a little too curious about your pregnancy. Why does humanity keep retelling these nightmares? Perhaps because they do more than scare us, they teach us. The Strigoi reminds us to honor the dead, lest they return hungrier than before. The Kelpie's sticky hide warns against trusting beauty without question. Even the Tikalosh, small as a child but vicious as a storm, teaches vigilance against threats that aren't always as big as they seem. These legends are the oldest survival guides we have, written in blood and whispers. But here's the real question: which of these horrors lingered in your mind long after the tale was told? Was it the Nukkalavi's grotesque, skinless gallop across the waves, or the way Yuki Anna's love curdled into something lethal? The answer might say more about you than the monster itself. After all, the best legends aren't just about what's lurking in the dark, they're about what we bring to the shadows when we dare to look. If these ancient terrors left you craving more dark histories, don't wander alone. Hit subscribe and join us next time when we dig up even older graves. The past isn't done with us yet.